I'm joined now by someone who actually started out as an actor before finding himself behind the camera on productions such as EastEnders, One Foot in the Grave, as well as many of the BBC Shakespeare adaptations. So I'd like to introduce Tony Garrick. How are you?
Alex, hi. I'd just like to note that it's December 25th, Christmas Day, 6 o'clock in the evening with a Christmas tree in the middle of a COVID Christmas. And this may go down in history for years to come. And I'm actually fine. How are you? How's your Christmas Day?
Oh, not bad at all, thank you. Well, thank you for talking me today of all days. And a lovely Christmas tree as well you've got up there.
Yeah, it's all for you. But it's all for Christmas anyway.
So as an AFM, was working on something like Doctor Who particularly complicated at the time?
I did The Invisible Enemy, yeah, The Invisible Enemy, as an AFM on that, with, who was the production manager on that? Oh, Norman Stewart. Was it difficult? Yes, it was, because I only did 4, and you need to get into the complications of Doctor Who. I can't remember doing any filming outside of the studio. I think there was no filming. No, there was no filming. You know best. You know it. You know it well. But the studios, the rehearsals were simple, just like any other rehearsal. You had weird props. You had lots of things to do in the rehearsals, etc., reordering props. And of course, as you know, I work with K9. So K9 is, as you all know, this little dog who, I didn't give birth to K9, but I was there on the first, I was on the initiation of K9 in the first studio. And we didn't have him for rehearsals, and I can't remember what we did. I think we had a toy dog or something. But he was an invention of visual effects. Visual effects were incredibly proud of this wonderful dog. Just remind me, who was the operator? You've got me down somewhere. I've got a list somewhere of the operator.
That would have been Tony Harding.
Oh, dear Tony. Yeah, and we had the voice of, do you remember the voice?
Oh, yeah, John Leeson as well, who voiced the parts.
John Leeson was the voice. And John would sit off behind a flat with a microphone and a video, a TV set like a monitor. And he would get a red light, stand by red light, or go green light, etc. But he was always following with his earphones. He was always following the script. So when he was cued to say the lines, he was already almost there anyway. So it was fun days. And then this time when K9, the sets used to wobble. The joke about Doctor Who, and the days that I did Doctor Who, in 77 onwards, the sets used to wobble, and you had to be careful not to touch them because the sets would wobble. They weren't, I don't know why they did wobble actually, because in drama serials, most of the sets were quite, the flats, supported by, the wooden, what do they call them? Those wooden rods with a weight on the end. They were quite stable, but Doctor Who sets, because they were quite well used, they used to wobble. So you mustn't touch the sets. Anyway, leading up to K9, that's my claim to fame. So I was the first production AFM to work with K9. And I remember Derek Goodwin was directing, and I'm right in saying that, aren't I? Derek Goodwin, yeah. And we cued K9 to come on, and Tony Harding was there ready to cue K9. Anyway, it wouldn't work. It didn't work. So I had this message from Derek Goodwin in the studio: for God's sake, kick that dog on the set, or words to that effect. And I hope if Derek ever sees this recording, I hope to God he doesn't take this as an insult. So I put my right foot behind the dog and pushed him on very gently, and he was on in shot. So that was it, and that was K9. We had big problems with K9 to begin with.
And you mentioned the director, Derek Goodwin there. What was he like to work with on set? Because he hadn't done any science fiction before, and certainly didn't do any afterwards.
I think Derek, if I can remember Derek, I think Derek was incredibly serious about all this. he was quite serious about Doctor Who and when he's directing. I'm not sure what he felt at home. I never asked him at the time. I can't, I just can't remember. It's such a long time ago. But we got through it, and Derek faced the challenges of all this, and he was very good. He was very good. But I think he was quite a serious chap anyway. But he took his job seriously.
And mentioning the crew, Norman Stewart was the PA on the story, and he would later go on to direct Doctor Who. What sort of a character was he?
Norman was offset. Poor man is died. Poor man is dead now. But I used to love working with. I used to love working with Norman. He used to call me man. Hey man. And I think he was from Canada, and he was great fun. And he would often say, "Right, okay, over to you. Here's the book. You're now in charge. Here are the earphones, and off you go in the distance to the assembly area, and leave me in charge of the studio." Like, I'd only been to the BBC for 5 years because I joined in 1972. So there was me in charge of the whole of the studio as an AFM. He knew what he was doing. He was giving me the chance of being a production manager on the set. I did it. And Derek Goodwin was told that Anthony's now on the studio floor. So yeah, that was good experience in that. That was really good. But he was a fun man. He was a fun chap.
And perhaps an aspect of The Invisible Enemy, which is maybe more relevant today than ever, was Raymond Hughes' costume design. Would you have had any sort of involvement or awareness of that design process as an AFM?
For The Invisible Enemy, we had loads of people in plastic, of course, like PPE. And that's a very good point there, Alex, to bring up, actually, because of today's situation with PPE. And so they were all covered in plastic. And I used to have one of Raymond Hughes's pictures of one of the actresses who was in the production, who was a friend of mine. And it was covered in plastic. He let me have it. Raymond let me have this picture of what the nurse covered in plastic filming. So I had it framed, and I actually sold it ages ago for £25. So there must be someone out there who remembers buying it, because I was actually broke ages ago. I don't know why I should have given it to the actress, but I didn't. And anyway, someone out there has got this wonderful picture. So maybe they can be in touch with you, and maybe they can be in touch with me and let me know if they still got it sometime. But Raymond was a very talented costume designer, and I think Doctor Who was not quite his style. He was more for doing single plays, the big costume dramas. But Raymond took it in his stride, and he did a wonderful job. Of course, he did a fantastic job. But yeah, that was it. Really, that's Raymond's remembrance of Raymond for me.
Perhaps inevitably, beyond actually working on the show, you had many connections with Doctor Who, having worked with both Mary Tamm and Patrick Troughton. Do you have happy memories of working with them?
Well, Patrick Troughton, I never did his Doctor Who because I think he finished in 79 and I joined the BBC in 1972, going back a long way. But I do remember doing a rehearsal with Patrick Troughton at the rehearsal block, and I remember the scene. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is Patrick Troughton, who used to be Doctor Who, And he was one of my heroes, of course, because he used to follow Doctor Who. But Patrick had a glittering career. But that's my memories of Patrick. And it wasn't a Doctor Who that he was rehearsing, but it was something. And for the life of me, I cannot remember, and I cannot do any research to find out what the production was. Mary Tamm, I didn't work with her. I don't think, no, she wasn't an Invisible Enemy, was she? No. Mary Tamm was wonderful. She was very beautiful. And she died at a very early age, which is very, very sad. And Mary Tamm was an assistant to Doctor Who. I think I read up that she didn't like the fact that she was assistant or companion, but I think the name was changed for Mary. But I worked with Mary on The Girls of Slender Means by Muriel Spark, directed by Maura Armstrong, and Mary was in this. And I think then she went to Hollywood, did a film with John Voight. Then she became a star, and then unfortunately, poor darling, she went on to do other things, and then later she died. Sad, very, very sad. She was a beautiful, beautiful person.
Before we started recording, you mentioned a lovely little occasion when you actually bumped into the TARDIS once again whilst working on a different production.
In the Ring Road, the TARDIS used to be stored in the Ring Road because the television centre got studios 1 to 3, 1 to 8, and it was a ring, like we call it the donut. And I used to go in there, having done Doctor Who many years later, when they were working on Doctor Who, and I used to see this blue box, this icon of scenery, this small blue box stuck on the Ring Road, and it's almost like one had to sort of kneel down and pray to it, but it was stuck there waiting to be put into the studio for the next recording of Doctor Who. But it was just an ordinary box. And it was a piece of magic. It was a piece of magic. And I remember seeing the other day of a broadcasting house, Portland Place, where there is a replica. It may be the same one, I don't know. It may be the same box, but there is one to the left as you go into television broadcasting house reception. The TARDIS is there in full view, whether it be a replica or the original. I hope it's the original for everybody to see. So Doctor Who is a treasured series of BBC.
Starting out in the early 70s at the BBC, it must have been a fantastic time to join with the development of CSO, scene shift, as well as established techniques like model shots.
Yeah, now we have model shots on Doctor Who. Now visual effects would work on those and film them along by the Westway. We would not do that, any part of that. That was a special thing that the visual effects team would do. So, and I cannot remember much about the Invisible Enemy and how many model shots we had on that. But CSO came in before, as you reminded me the other day, before 77. It was around, 1972, was it? Yeah. And then we had scene shift as well. And it was a piece of magic in those days. It was like this blue screen, CSO screen, or this green screen that we used to see. I think it's mainly green now because they can't mix the blue sky with the blue of the CSO, so it's mainly green. And I was in awe of all this, and I remember, I think it was maybe before the Doctor Who in 77, within the first 5 years of me working at the BBC, I was allowed to go to Birmingham up to Glasgow, BBC Glasgow. And I was in this wonderful carriage, this carriage with the corridor, the old-fashioned trains, that takes me back a bit. And there was these two wonderful gentlemen, and they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm going up to Glasgow, BBC Glasgow, to do a film up there, probably to do a film," which never came to fruition anyway. I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, we're on our way to a conference in Glasgow. And the conference is about CSO, colour separation overlay, graphics, and the future of television using CSO, and also scene shift." Now, I use scene shift later, but I'll tell you more about that later. Anyway, I was rather impressed by these gentlemen, and one of them told me I don't know the dates of Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes, but one of them actually was a personal friend of Conan Doyle. And I may be completely wrong because I didn't look up the dates of Conan Doyle, but I was impressed by these two gentlemen. And they said there's a big future out there. And I think I was in my early 30s then. And I thought, wow, this is going to take off in a big way. Color separation, putting layers of picture on the background of your set, which in fact you don't need to build a set anymore. You can put mountains on it, etc., etc. And of course, that has developed to your day, Alex, where you've got one of the things, his dark materials. And I'm looking at, what am I looking at? Game of Thrones at the moment, and all those wonderful productions that you're doing. I mean, the sky's the limit. The sky's the limit. But I just want to quickly talk about scene shift, because we did scene shift with The Devil's Crown, and in particular, the marriage of the procession of Richard the Lionheart and Eleanor of Aquitaine, played by Michael Byrne and Jane Lapeter, and they were in a carriage. And we had to shoot the carriage going right to left, which moved, of course, and in the background there was the London, on CSO was superimposed on CSO in the background. And what we had, if the camera moved in the front, the scenery in the background would also move. So we had this thing called scene shift, whereupon the coach with the two principals in would move right to left. And scene shift, the technique of scene shift, and I don't know how it worked, would actually click the background would actually stay, and it wouldn't travel with the camera going right to left. So it looked as if they were traveling. So we would go right to left, and this background would go left to right. So that was called scene shift. That was used for a very short time, but then more techniques came through. So to what you've got today, and you're very lucky, Alex, to have all this.
Looking at your work, you worked across so many different departments and genres, series, serials, as well as drama, light entertainment. Did you have any particular preference in terms of which genre you worked in?
Well, in drama serials, I was there from 72 to 79. And it was mainly, I did lots of costume drama, and I love costume drama, period pieces, as an AFM. And then a production manager in 79, I worked in serials on Mackenzie up in Scotland, which was a modern piece. Then I managed to get an attachment in drama plays, single plays, where you work with really top-rate directors, really good directors, and really good actors, and because actors don't want to be tied up for too long. So in a 6-episode serial, so single plays for them were perfect. Did I enjoy? I loved every moment of working in drama serials, in particular 6-parters, filming, no matter what it was, television, whether it was outside broadcast recording, which was The Mayor of Casterbridge with Alan Bates. That was an OB. That was great fun. Then there was studio productions that I enjoyed, period, modern pieces, Shakespeare that I worked on. But then as soon as I transferred into 79 into production manager in plays, I look back on serials and I really didn't miss the costume drama. I still do costume drama in plays department. I did 3 Shakespeares, which were great fun. But no, I never had a preference.
Am I right in thinking it was as a location manager you worked on One Foot in the Grave, which I think today is still a very iconic series?
Yeah, it was towards the end of my life at the BBC. I think it was about 49, coming up to 50. And they wanted someone in, Susie Belbin, producer, director, One Foot in the Grave, wanted someone to do locations. So they asked my department, said, well, would you like to do it? I said, yeah, okay, it's a bit of a challenge. So I did 2, I think, one with Barbara Windsor, would you believe? I met Barbara Windsor, and I remember meeting her at the hotel, and she said, hello, darling, and I loved it. She had tiny, tiny feet. She was beautiful. And then with the other one I did, Angus Dayton, I think it was Angus Dayton was in One Foot in the Grave. I'm sure it was Angus Dayton. Yeah, I'm sure it is. And then I did one with the tank that the character Victor Meldrew was driving. He was a chauffeur, and his client, he was driving along, and he turned left down into this valley, which I had to find as a location manager. And if he went all the way down, we had to film a long shot. We had to do an establishing shot of him coming to the end, and there was this big mound. And as soon as he got there, this enormous Saracen tank would come up over him, and they got out. I think they got out and they squashed the car. I'm not sure, I can't remember. I think it squashed the car, but they both got out, the passenger, and Victor Meldrew got out. And that was a fun thing to do. But my goodness me, I had to find as a location manager, I had to find the field. There had to be a hill, and there had to be a big mound, and we had to cut on the big mound on the other side. We had to cut a trench for the tank to travel up, so it wouldn't be seen too soon, with the camera looking this way. And then so it would be lower than normal in this trench. And up we saw this turret coming up and then smashing on, if it did, I can't remember, smash onto the car. That was demanding. Light entertainment for me was a big challenge, more so than drama, because there's always these stunts that you've got to look at. I mean, there was one where they buried Victor Meldrew in his back garden. You know, they're all special effects stunts. So that was my time in as a location manager. I think I did 2 back to back, I'm not really sure. But they were so very demanding. Yeah, they were very demanding. But that was my only time in light entertainment.
But you started out as an actor. So how did that actor's mindset help you when you moved behind the camera?
Well, for casting working as an AFM, it would help if I was asked about casting. That, you know, having been an actor, that helped with my knowledge of actors. But working I was glad to be on the other end of the cameras, actually, quite honestly. I was on TV ages ago when I was at drama school, and I was 22, playing a thug to Tristan De Vere Cole's United, where I had to run on a football pitch and throw a punch at one of the actors, and then there were some film sequences afterwards outside a house. Then there was a studio piece, but that was short-lived. And in a way, I was more relieved to get. I gave up acting when I was 27, and I didn't do much really. And then I joined the BBC, and so I was working on the other side of the cameras, and that to me was more fun. And more stable, of course, because I was there for 25 years.
Would I be right in thinking that it was your eye for casting which led to Alan Bennett being involved within one of the BBC's Shakespeare adaptations?
David Jones directed Merry Wives of Windsor. You had Judy Davis, the famous Judy Davis, Prunella Scales, Ben Kingsley. See, all these big actors did these single plays. Elizabeth Spriggs, wonderful Elizabeth Spriggs, you probably won't remember her. And David was trying to cast Justice Shallow. And I suddenly thought, why don't we get Alan Bennett? So David said, hey, that's a good idea. So he phoned Alan Bennett. And I remember now that Alan Bennett said, well, I'm not really sure, I'm not really an actor. And David said, we can make you one. So Alan Bennett took the role. He took the role, and he was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. We wanted, a very famous actor, I can't remember his name now, in America to come and play, who played Tom Jones in the film Tom Jones. What's his name?
Albert Finney?
It was Albert Finney in Hollywood. And I remember David Jones ringing him and saying, asking him to say, look, we think it's about time we play full staff. And he said he wasn't right for him, or he didn't want to come over to play it. So yeah, I missed out on working with Albert Finney.
As you went through the BBC, who were the people that you particularly learned from?
Oh, there are one in particular was Marion McDougall. Do you remember Marion? She's died, poor darling, she died about 8 years ago, I think. Marion McDougall, she was a production manager that trained me in drama serials, and she would know these wonderful shortcuts. Marion was, she was top notch, and I learned a lot from Marion. How to find locations. She was a location manager for the Prince Regent. We shared this with Margot Hayhoe. Margot Hayhoe had one team, and Marianne had the other team, and I was Marianne's AFM, and we had to find the House of Commons before it was burnt down. You know, because the House of Commons is new compared to what it was in the days of yore. And so she said the best way of finding these locations is by telephone. She looked through all the churches, because we thought we'd go into a church, which was a deconsecrated church, because we wanted to have a big room with pillars, lots of pillars, and a balcony around. That was the House of Commons before it is as it is now. So we found one in Lewes. In Lewes was absolutely perfect, this deconsecrated church. And it was right by a main road, Lewes to Brighton. So Marianne got the police around, and they stopped with her personality and her ways of going about things. That's what I learned. You could do anything. And the police were so cooperative, and they stopped the traffic during recording of the trial of Queen Caroline of Brunswick, who was related to Prince Regent, who was played by Peter Egan, by big star Peter Egan. So there's Marianne, Margot Hayhoe, God bless her. Dear Margot, taught me a lot.
Was there anyone else that particularly influenced you as well?
Yeah, lovely, wonderful John Nathan Turner. John used to have nicknames for everybody, and he used to call me Puss. What's up, Puss? I said, oh, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, John was wonderful. He kept everybody together. And I did How Green Was My Valley with him, with Stanley Baker and Sharon Phillips in the lead. And we had it was hard work. That was really hard work. And after every rehearsal, we used to go for a drink around to this pub next door. And I said, John, I can't, I've got to get rehearsals for the next day. I've got to get him sorted out for the next day. Oh, Paul, come round for a drink. Anyway, I did, and then went back to the rehearsal room and then on location filming. And we always used to have a good time with John. And then the end of each episode, 6 episodes, John would organize a party. And one party was in Richard Harris's, the film star Richard Harris's, penthouse on the Thames, because Stanley Baker knew Richard Harris. And we had this party where John said, right, we're going to do a pantomime of all the people all the principal actors in this series. So I played Sharon Phillips, dressed as Sharon Phillips, and we did the skit. John was a marvel, and I learned a lot from John. That the show is really, really important. And whatever you do, the show is key. You work to the show, always work to the show. And there was another lady by the name of V. Openshaw Taylor. She was a production manager. She always taught me, she influenced a lot when I started off as an AFM. She died, I think late 70s. And V always used to say to me, as regards to the budget, work to the show, not the budget, but always work to what the show demands. And there'll always be money found, whatever. And the show is so important, So that's what I learned, those 3 people. 4 people, John Nathan Turner, Margot Hayhoe, Mary McDougall, and V. Openshaw Taylor, in my younger days at the BBC.
You're clearly very proud of your time at the BBC, and understandably so. But how do you think you could perhaps sum up your time there? And I think what was the golden age of television, and in particular the BBC?
How would I sum everything up? Gosh, I don't really know. The fact is that I was very lucky. In the BBC, you could apply for Director General. There was always a time when I used to go and see my manager, and he would say, right, you finished this program, you finished the studio, do you want to film? Where would you like? What would you like? Or would you like an outside broadcast recording in a drummer on tape, which were very few. So I said, well, I've just finished this studio. I would quite like to do a film. What have you got? So he would come up with certain things. And so I would go ahead and do that. Okay, you've got 2 weeks before you start. Go on standby for 2 weeks. We'll call you back. We need you. So I used to go home and then come back and start the film. And opportunities were vast in those days. And I did the BBC director's course. I think it was 45. And with all this knowledge I had behind me of production, TV production, I did the director's course. I directed a few EastEnders, which was really, really difficult. That was so difficult. And then of course, meeting the cast of EastEnders, to me, was a great privilege. Having worked on EastEnders, then I worked with Trevor Nunn on Porgy and Bess and Othello, which was for me a great opportunity. I mean, who can say that? That was towards the end of my career, 48, 49, when I was that age group. Then I worked with Deborah Warner on Hedda Gabler. That was fun. Both these wonderful two directors. I was a technical director, but with Trevor had already directed studio with. He directed Macbeth with Judi Dench and Sir Ian McKellen, so he knew what he was doing. And I went along for Porgy and Bess and Othello, and working with Othello as well. Those two big productions. We did these, I think, at Shepperton or Pinewood. I think it was Shepperton. No, Pinewood. Within the BBC, and what a privilege for me to work with Trevor Nunn and all those wonderful actors that he engaged. And of course, there was Deborah Warner. Again, she's a wonderful director on Hedda Gabler. And she knew exactly what she wanted. She stretched everybody. And I worked with a chap called Chris, who was the cameraman at the time, the lead cameraman. Between us both, we worked out the shots for Deborah. But I think Chris did mainly of the work on the floor with Deborah, and it was a challenge. That was the highlight of my career, basically. And you could apply for any job when you're at the BBC. So I'm grateful for 25 years of working at the BBC, and it was just terrific fun.
It certainly seems to have been a fantastic time to work at the BBC with so many fantastic people, actors, directors, and on some incredible shows.
They were the halcyon days. I think it's a word I wanted to use. The halcyon days and unfortunately they've all gone. Well, we were all members of staff. We all had different departments. We had costume, makeup, visual effects. They all had their own different departments. Heads, they were all members of staff. So all in-house. And it was pure magic and great fun.
The halcyon days of the BBC was the golden time when you were there. I think that's a lovely note to end on. So I'd just like to say thank you so much for your time, Anthony. It's been a joy to talk about just some of your career. And I know we could talk all day about a lot more, but thank you very much. And have a lovely Christmas.
And have a good Christmas and stay safe. Bye.